The PlayStation is an incredible console. It's over 30 years old now, and I still adore it as much as I did when I first played it back in 1997. You see this classic box design, marvel at the startup screen, and then play the games. All in 5th generation heaven. You folks might know that graphical development on the system never stopped evolving during its lifetime, and developers who mastered the console's power and architecture pushed the graphics as the years went by. Here's an example for you. Ace Combat, or Air Combat in the West, was released in 1995 by Namco, and for the time it was a great looking game. However, fast forward to 1999 with Ace Combat 3 and well, I think it's clear the PlayStation had more to offer than many realised. Ace Combat isn't the only example of enhanced graphics on the PlayStation. I played a few games for you to see what other companies achieved when it comes to graphical fidelity. I utilised my trusty Sony official RGB SCART cable and the GBST at 1080p for all games. Grab your favourite food and drink, this could be interesting. Let's start with the TOCA games, which had 3 entries on the PlayStation. TOCA Touring Car Championship was the first game, beginning the franchise in 1997. When Codemasters released it, the game looked decent for the time with good track designs, weather effects, and even the headcam interior view, which I always approve of. The game even supports widescreen, which I never knew existed until recently. Goes to show, some titles hid surprises you didn't expect to find. These days, the game looks barren, simple, and very square looking with the graphics. There was room for improvement, and Codemasters wanted to show progress with the platform. Codemasters would then follow this up with TOCA 2 Touring Car Challenge. Released in 1999, the game sees notable changes to the graphics, starting with the menu screen. Incredibly, the widescreen mode from the first game had been removed. I'm not sure why they did that. A hint all was not well? Jumping straight into the game, we can see clearly that work has been done on the car models, trackside details, and cockpit interior views. All 3 elements have been upgraded, and the side-by-sides confirm this. Even weather effects look more realistic during wet weather, which is nice to see. I wouldn't call it substantial. After all, a PC version of TOCA 2 does exist, and naturally it looks phenomenal compared to the PlayStation counterpart. I will also note the second game sounds and plays a lot better compared to its predecessor. That counts for something, right? I do get the sense playing this that Codemasters wasn't completely happy with the results here, and they would drastically prove the true power of the PlayStation the following year. The final game in the series for the PlayStation was TOCA World Touring Cars, or, since I'm playing the American version, Jarrett and Labonte Stock Car Racing. It was released in 2000. You can immediately see the scope of the game has been expanded, and the menus look great here. It's most certainly designed with the new Millennium look in mind. Oh yes, the widescreen feature has returned, and it looks even better now. As we jump into a race, the cars look incredible and now look much less boxy, especially compared to the first entry. The cars have curves, added reflections, and little details helping them come to life. The interior cockpit view is now fully functional, detail-rich, and more involved than before. Codemasters pushed the PlayStation hard for this release. Everything has been given a graphical overhaul which players would have noticed even back then, even using composite cables. The best part of the game is the fantastic new damage model, which remains one of the greatest ever created. That alone was a huge upgrade from the second game and easily made the title stand out. Unfortunately, the frame rate isn't fantastic, hovering around the 15 to 20 mark once other racing cars are racing with you. Smoothness was definitely lacking by the third title. Despite this, the third game is fun, impressive to look at, and a real triumph for the racing genre. Let's get into Bloody Roar, the once arcade game which saw a port to the PlayStation in 1997. This fighting game allows you to be a more powerful beast version of your chosen fighter, and with a powerful enough attack, you can blast other fighters out of the stadium. The fast-paced gameplay with this unique touch was unlike anything else out there, and it looked decent on the PlayStation, keeping many of the arcade goodies intact. Graphically, it was a bit rough, but good animation, fast responsive action and punchy sound effects helped elevate the game past that problem. This is a great game, but what if the graphics saw a massive, and I do mean a massive, overhaul? Enter Bloody Roar 2, which was released on the PlayStation in 1999. Let's begin with the menus. Well, they look nicer, are sharper graphically with bolder colours, and I love the artwork on display. Look, widescreen is supported now, with Y2 being the most recommended for 16:9 displays. Once you play the game, the detail improvements are only too apparent. Character detail and animations are completely overhauled, the environments are much more complex compared to the first game, and even the special effects are grander. All of this wrapped in a package which now uses the PlayStation's high-res mode of 480i, or 576i if you're in the PAL territory. It even maintains the 60 frames per second smoothness, which goes to show how much power was left unused on the console. The developers turned up the graphical dial up to 11 for this release. It makes you wonder why they didn't make the first game look like this, but development, budget, ambition and good programmers can surprise anyone when given time to cook, as they say. Let's go into the F-Zero type racing series for the PlayStation. That's right, we're talking about Wipeout, the 1995 smash hit for the Sony PlayStation. This is the Japanese version. Can you tell? No? Me neither. This frustric racing series was known for its anti-gravity ships racing down the tracks, using power-ups to slow opponents down, all while going at high speeds, racing around grand environments, and listening to a fantastic soundtrack motivating you to continue. I know, by 2025 standards, Wipeout is pretty ancient looking now. The lack of flair in the aesthetic is hard to appreciate, but for 1995, Wipeout was technically impressive and certainly showcased mid-90s design and console graphics at their best. Now, Psygnosis knew this wasn't good enough, so in 1996 and 1997, Wipeout 2097 or Wipeout XL or Extra Large in Japan and America was the sequel, and wow, in just one short year, the developers really amped up everything. With a higher budget and newfound experience under their belt, the next Wipeout game truly shined. The menu interface was redesigned, looking smarter. The graphics saw an improvement with better textures, more frustric designs across the board, faster, more responsive crafts, and absolutely fantastic soundtrack to boot. The scale was grander too, showcasing much more environmental effects, transforming the tracks into more believable worlds that might have existed in our idea of the future back then. We also see a less blocky appearance compared to the first game, and dynamic lighting is really apparent as you play through the levels. Everything looks less flat now. Impressive for a game that spent only 1 year in development. A lot of people look back at this game fondly, and no wonder, it's spectacular. Then in 1999, Wipeout 3 came along and the design philosophy changed completely. The menus looked simplified yet stylish with a cleaner, more minimalistic look which would continue to be used in the early 2000s. Widescreen support was added for the first time in the series, and get this, the game looked absolutely incredible. The tracks had more life behind them, designs were bigger and bolder, and the vision of the future looked much more believable in Wipeout 3, highlighting changing tastes, fully unlocking the power of the PlayStation, giving us something truly special. Compared to the 1995 original, Wipeout 3 is practically a generation ahead graphically, a huge achievement for a game made 4 years after the first one debuted. The team went absolutely all out to ensure that the series left the PlayStation on a high note. If you got the special edition from Europe only, that version had tracks from the first and second games, which only showcases further how much the graphics evolved from the first 2 Wipeout games. It's such a shame that commercially Wipeout 3 didn't do so well despite it being a great game with fantastic graphics. We now have the survival horror classic, the one that made its name on the PlayStation, Resident Evil. Although 4 games appeared on the PlayStation, I want to focus on the first 3 games and figure out if there were any graphical upgrades between them. Using a slightly altered version of the first game's DualShock version of the director's cut, Resident Evil uses 3D graphics for characters and items, and 2D pre-rendered backgrounds for backdrops and for the environments. The two mixed together well, especially on CRTs using composite video. It's not so good using RGB SCART, a HDMI television and my GBSC, but I still enjoy the experience, and for the most part it works still fairly well. Character animations are a bit odd in motion. If you stand completely still, your character doesn't move and running looks interesting. Capcom did not expect success, and once Resident Evil sold millions, they suddenly wanted the sequel to be even better. From late 1996 to early 1998, Capcom developed Resident Evil 2 and their first build didn't please them, citing dull and boring environments and gameplay. So in 1998, Resident Evil 2 finally released, and from the get-go, the improvements are obvious. We now have CGI cutscenes from start to finish, running at 30 frames per second. The menu looks more menacing and now iconic to the series. We even get noticeable improvements to the graphics, character details, animations, and pre-rendered backgrounds. All of it is substantial, making each area come alive and enhancing the fear of running around zombie-infested areas in your bid to survive the invasion. Could Capcom push the PlayStation anymore? They certainly tried in the third game, Nemesis. We now see much improved looking cutscenes now, although the downside is they now run at 15 frames per second. As for character models, they are refined with smoother looking animation, better character models, especially with the elbows, and zombies have greater amounts of different 3D models to see as you play. Environments are still 2D pre-renders, but are busier in the details, giving you much more visual clues as to what happened to Raccoon City during the viral outbreak. If we compare the first to the third game, as both star Jill Valentine, the graphical upgrades are clear to see. Let's move back into fighting games and check out Zero Divide. This was an early fighting game for the PlayStation, released in 1995. As you can see, it's a 3D fighting game set in the future. Robots and machines fighting each other is rad, right? Well, yes, but not if the controls are sluggish and combat somewhat limited by the moveset at your disposal. It's not a bad game, just nowhere near games such as Virtua Fighter 2 or even the original Tekken. The 30 frames per second cap doesn't help much either. For its time, it looked good enough and the armor breaking feature was quite novel. Zoom's creation was very popular in Japan, and in 1997, Zero Divide 2 was born. The second game pretty much fixed everything from the first game. 30 frames per second? No, now it's 60. Average graphics? Now it's smooth and nicely textured with bright and bold colours to make the presentation stand out. Stiff animations? Now much more believable and realistic. Background graphics? Now pre-rendered and higher in detail too. We even get caged arenas in some fights as well. Even the soundtrack got a big boost. I know, it's not a graphical feature, but it's worth listening to. Zero Divide would never get a second sequel, but its second game shows the PlayStation had plenty left in the tank. Let's go on to the Japanese exclusive fighting game series, which started life on the X68000 PC in 1994 before going to other platforms during its 5-year run. On the PlayStation, we start with Special Burning Fest, released in 1996. As you can see, the 2D graphics are pretty primitive for the platform. The PlayStation was capable of better, and games such as Rayman proved it. Animation is a bit stiff too, and the general graphical fidelity is below par, I feel. Now don't get me wrong, the game is still fun to play, if a bit undercooked, and the soundtrack is worth a listen. In 1997, Excellent Burning Fest was remade on the PlayStation, using the same graphics as the former game. In other words, there's nothing to see here graphically outside of the updated story mode that I can't read. In 1999, Burning Fest Final was released for the PlayStation, and now we get a big graphical upgrade. The character sprites are much bigger now and are full of detail. I mean, put it alongside Special Burning Fest and the difference is almost laughable. Animations are faster, smoother and much more responsive, making gameplay a treat. You actually feel engaged playing this title. I really enjoyed pounding away at those who stood before me. The music is the same, albeit with some different tracks thrown in here and there. What I'm saying is this: Asuka 120% Burning Fest Final is a good looking, great playing game that finally utilises the power of the PlayStation and showcases what can be done when resources and ambition shines through. The series was meant to come back in 2024, but as of 2025, no new game has appeared yet. We cannot leave out the Ace Combat series, can we? What started out as a modest arcade fight sim turned into a franchise with grander ambitions, especially with Ace Combat 3. Let's go back to 1995 when Ace Combat, or Air Combat in the West, was released on the PlayStation. As you can see, the game looks very much of its time. Don't get me wrong, the planes still look like planes and the environments look acceptable for the time. In 1995, this game would have blown people away. Back then, 3D flight sims on consoles weren't that great, and Namco showed it was possible to make this actually work on Sony's magical console. There's clear limitations here, but Namco likely knew this, and in 1997, Ace Combat 2 hit the PlayStation hard. The second you play it, the improvements are clear to see. We get huge improvements in the plane details, much more rounded geometry and huge graphical outputs in the environments. What were once barren land sites now give way to cityscapes, more detailed landscapes with clearer terrain changes, and get this, easier transitions from ground to air, making the whole experience feel complete. Even going high in the sky is easier than before. Ace Combat 2 All Round showcases the graphical power Namco had mastered on this platform. Namco wasn't done, and with the next title, Ace Combat 3, they'd show the world what they could really do. In 1999, Ace Combat 3 arrived in Japan and, oh boy, they decided to go to the future. This is an English translation of the third game, and wow, straight away the scope and scale of the title is clear to see. Talking heads, a full-on story and reworked presentation already sets the tone. When you then jump into the game properly, feast your eyes on the graphical brilliance. The planes now look outstanding, and thanks to the analog stick controls, you can now view the planes in 360 degrees, just to admire them further, and see the danger levels around you, of course. The detail level has been cranked to 11, with everything possible seeing refinement, including the environment, lighting details, and of course special effects, making you feel more involved in being a pilot. I'm pretty certain the game engine that powered Ridge Racer Type 4 is being used here, albeit modified to work for Ace Combat. If not, the rendering techniques from that game are certainly being reused, and it allowed this game to age well considering the platform. Ace Combat 3 was ambitious graphically, yet Namco pulled it off superbly, yet didn't forget to make the game fun and engaging at the same time. Yes, the Western version of the game stripped away much of what made Ace Combat 3 so special, but make no mistake, as a graphical showpiece, it delivers, and then some. Well folks, I played a few more games to showcase the biggest graphical upgrades the PlayStation received during its lifespan. I hope you enjoyed the games on display, and I will see you at the end. Well, there we are. Several series of games released for the PlayStation that showcase big graphical improvements during its lifetime. Although not all games showcased graphical improvements on this level, many PlayStation games did show improvements visually throughout the years. For the development teams that really mastered the PlayStation's architecture and also had a good budget to work with, the results could be spectacular. It helps that the PlayStation was fairly easy to work with, meaning getting the best out of it was down to the skill of the individuals working on it. Sometimes it's easy to forget how primitive early games on the console were, especially its 3D efforts. But as you saw in this video, the graphics did evolve significantly over time, allowing the platform to keep up until the 6th generation of consoles really took over during 2001. What did you folks think of the video? If I decide to cover this subject next time, what other games should I look at? Tell me in the comments, and I will see you soon.